UFC 15.5 Ultimate Japan took place on December 21st, 1997 from Yokohama, Japan at the Yokohama Arena in front of 5,000 people in a 17,000 seat building. We close out the year 1997 with our first event outside of the United States and other related territories. We'll just forget Puerto Rico exists. And we go to Japan. Now, when we reviewed UFC 15, we were only a week removed from Pride 1. That review's on the channel, go and watch it. The event Pride 1 took place at the Tokyo Dome in front of somewhere in the region of 40,000 people. The UFC, seeing this, thought to themselves, well, we're kind of struggling here in America. Why don't we go over there, draw a big house, show these guys back home that this is a legitimate thing we have going on here and not some back alley dog fighting ring. And then they proceed to go to Japan, not even half fill the Yokohama Arena in Japan, and we live to fight another day. I genuinely wonder how expensive this was. Hopefully the exchange rate was nice to them. I would love to know how big a difference the income, or in this case the loss, is compared to just having the event in Alabama or Georgia, as we have become accustomed to. But as always, we open with the video package here. The Octagon goes global, nothing really to this video. Not one of their best. However, this time it is the voice of Mike Goldberg narrating the open, and not Bruce Beck. Bruce is gone, Mike is here. So it's Mike Goldberg who opens up the gate. And we open up the gate to the city of Yokohama, which looks very nice, before we move to the arena, which is absolutely pitch black except for the Octagon that's lit up. The audio from the narration noticeably changes as we go to commentary. Jeff Blatnick and Mike Goldberg are using their indoor voices on commentary as though they're having a secret conversation that nobody's allowed to hear, and the reason for that is because the arena is deathly quiet. Again, we only have 5,000 people here in this 17,000 seat building. If they talk too loud, the people in the bleeds might be able to hear them. So they run down the card, focusing on Vitor Belfort, whose gi has a Japanese flag instead of the American one. I kind of like that. They're basically saying that he got fraud checked by Randy Couture, and what Vitor is going to show up tonight, the guy that won the tournament in the super fight, or the one who got beat by the tournament winner, Randy Couture. Like, they act like one loss, and well, Vitor might just want to pack it up and go home. We run down the rules, ways to win, which we normally do. I wish Pride would do this, but we'll see if they do in our next review. And I'll mention this now, Mike Goldberg is one of the reality combat guys, like Bruce Beck. He lets us know that this is reality combat, reality fighting. Meanwhile, Blatnick is a mixed martial arts guy. And that's what he calls this whole ultimate fighting deal, the reality combat. We get our only alternate matchup. And by the way, it's a heavyweight tournament. Trey Tellingman is back from the Lion's Den. And look, I just feel bad for this guy. He's been here before. And if you haven't seen Trey, maybe, you know, the ones here that are new to these videos, Trey was 1 year old when he was in a car accident and had to get his pec removed. And that's brought down the mood just a little bit in this review. But he's missing half his chest. And I don't know if anyone else is like that, but this just kind of makes me uncomfortable when I watch it. He's up against Brad Kohler of the Hammer House, who looks like he's a crossbreed between Mark Coleman, Vanderlei Silva, with a hint of Trisomy 21 in there. It's weird, like I've said this before, that the guys from the Lions Den all look the same, between Ken Shamrock, Frank Shamrock, Jerry Bolander, Guy Mesger, Trey Tellingman. And now all these Hammer House guys look the exact same as well, between Mark Coleman, Mark Kerr, Brad Kohler. They all look the same. Trey has trauma on his shorts, probably some projection. 1 minute in, Kohler throws a punch, knocks his own self over, and then takes down Trey. And you know the deal, we sit here and guard for 5 minutes, no contact being made, no attempt to finish the fight, or even advance position. Ref stands them up, Kohler sort of scarpers around, trying not to get hit before shooting another takedown. Into side control, half guard, lands a couple shots before being stood up. The crowd actually only makes noise when the fighters get stood up here. And, like, I don't know if Jeff Blatnick's sick or something, but he's commentating like he's watching fucking golf. It makes him really hard to hear. Mike Goldberg's a little louder, you can hear him a little bit clearer. But Kohler goes for a double leg, tries to take the back. Trey rolls, Kohler just dives into guard because everybody's so desperate for guard. Trey's able to armbar him for the win after 10 minutes. This was pretty shit, quite boring, went a while, and it's only 10 minutes, but it felt like an eternity with the out of nowhere finish. Can we please just get rid of these alternate fights on the card? Just show the highlights later on. We move from here to a Tank Abbott propaganda video. Mike Goldberg asks us to dial up UFC on the internet and surf for their website to keep up with the action in the octagon. I found this hilarious. And we have Tank Abbott up next. Let me know what you think. Tank's record is not great, let's just be clear. And I totally get it if you do not want to put him in here. But this guy is one of the real stars of UFC at this point, is holding this bogey together almost single-handedly. Does Tank Abbott get in the pioneer wing of UFC? I know that's not a joke, right? I know his record's like 10-5. But in terms of impact on the sport, especially in his early days, he's a bit of a pioneer. More of a pioneer than some of the guys already in there. So I can see like UFC maybe adding a BMF wing later on down the road, where there's guys who may not be a glamorous name, a poor record, but still have a big impact on the sport. And to me, Tank is one of those guys. I get it, technically not the best, never fucking trained a day in his life, right, and a poor record, but a fucking superstar for UFC and a real BMF, literally anytime, any place, anywhere, even in the stands. I can see them adding a BMF wing in the future, and Tank is one of those guys. People will probably disagree, and that's fine. I suppose it depends on what you think a Hall of Fame should be, whether it's strictly just for the best of the best, or if it's people who may not have had the best record but had a huge impact and made a difference to the sport. If they opened up that contributor wing for people who were fighters, then I could see Tank getting in there. Tank doesn't really get any credit for his run here, and look, it may also be, for some people, do you value a single run like Tank's on right now, or do you value the whole career, which almost falls off a cliff towards the end? But look, that's a debate for another time. Let me know what you think about that in the comments though. Should he be in? That should be a fun read. Look, Tank's here. He faces Yoji Anjo in the semi-final of the heavyweight tournament. And you know how this goes. Tank will shoot forward for 10 seconds. I say shoot, that's poor choice of words. He will rampage forward for 10 seconds. If he can't knock you out, then just go for the takedown. But we get so much fence grabbing here. Again, let's not let the rules get in the way of a fair fight. And look, nothing really too much happening here. Yoji Anjo does well to keep Tank from being able to strike him. Does a good job holding him, some nice wrist control. I will say Tank loves doing this thing where he will put the top of his head on your like chin, jaw, like up against the cage, and he'll stand up there on his toes, just pressing all his weight into your head and neck. It's kind of like a modified neck crank. Like he submitted Steve Jenim with it. And he does it in nearly all of his fights. When he gets the takedown, he'll just try and neck crank you up against the cage. Big John stands us up a few times actually. Tank looks so tired, and now the leg kicks from Maurice Smith start from Yoji Anjo. I don't know where they've been this whole fight, but again, straight back to the grappling. Tank takes him down, and even into overtime, Anjo then tries the leg kicks, and Tank throws a huge straight to close the distance, takes him down, and we stay down for the rest of the round. Tank wins this decision clearly. Tank has an interview with Blatnick, who says he hurt his hand at the end of the fight, so we'll see if he makes it to the final. We then preview our title fights, Frank Shamrock and Kevin Jackson, which I'm really looking forward to, and Maurice Smith versus Randy Couture, which should also be good. Those are coming later on. We get some Kevin Jackson propaganda, and I'll just say this now, I wish we got more Kevin Jackson, like beforehand. He came in and he dominated his then lightweight tournament. But like an Olympic gold medalist, I wonder how he would have done up against the heavier fighters when UFC was still mixing them. But next up, we have a debut for Kazushi Sakuraba. He takes on Conan Silveira. And now Sakuraba, here's a story, right? He trains with Yoji Anjo. We've seen Anjo versus Abbott. Sakuraba not supposed to be here. Instead, we're supposed to have Anjo and a guy called Hiromitsu Kanehara. They're both wrestlers, or pro wrestlers, so is Sakuraba to be fair. But Sakuraba is actually a last minute replacement for Kanehara, who got injured, and as the story goes, this is a heavyweight tournament. The minimum weight is 200 pounds, as we know. Sakuraba apparently only weighs 183 here. He reported himself as being 203. Silveira's over 240. So he's in his second MMA fight ever. Nearly 20 pounds underweight and 60 pounds lighter than his opponent. We'll see how this one goes. The fight starts. Sakuraba shoots from a mile away, still gets a takedown though. Silveira is able to reverse position, get control of Sakuraba, and gets the back a whole lot of work on the ground. I stopped taking notes just to watch this. The transitions are fast, scrambling for an arm lock, both guys looking for top position. This is great. Both men back to the feet, and you can see the size difference there when Silveira starts hitting Sakuraba with some good shit. Sakuraba blocking up against the cage, high guard, eating those shots, and he changes level, looks for the takedown, and Big John stops the fight. The crowd react. I can't even explain. It wasn't positive or negative, it was just noise. Big John thought that Sakuraba slumped to the mat and was about to get put out cold, so he stepped in and stopped it. This was a bad stoppage, and honestly, it might be the first one in UFC history in terms of the fight being stopped early. There's been instances where there's been a late stoppage. Shout out to Orlando Veet, he says hi from the cemetery. And shout out to Jason DeLuca as well, who waves with his left arm because his right one is hanging off. But this was again a terrible stoppage. Big John goes over to the corner and says he was out. He clearly wasn't, but that's what Big John thought he saw. Now the crowd starts booing. Now they are pissed off. Sakuraba tries to take the mic out of Bruce Buffer's hands, who reacts very calmly and professionally. But then again, is Bruce Buffer really going to step up to Sakuraba? Who knows? The crowd are proper pissed off. This is the most noise they've made all night, but commentary is now trying to run PR for Big John, saying that, well, Big John thought that it was the right thing to do and safety of the fighters and all this other bullshit, right? Can we just call it what it is? It was a bad call. He made a mistake. Blatnick saying when he dropped to his knees it looked like he was out. No, it didn't. It looked like he went for a shitty single leg takedown. Commentary, again, see whenever you think they've turned the corner, they just ruin it by acting as though they're fucking blind and can't just see what's in front of them. They run Frank Shamrock propaganda, and I don't mind it because I am looking forward to this fight. Mike Goldberg tells us that Tank has broken his left hand and will be unable to continue to the final, and I swear to God, Tank Abbott out on another final. This guy could have had more tournament wins than Hoist Gracie if he had some luck. Even if he had bad luck, it would still be something. He has nothing right now. Mike Goldberg also lets us know that the UFC sanctioning body is not blind and they can call what's in front of them. And they say the fight was stopped early, so unlike UFC 11, Silveira will not be handed the win because his opponent can't continue. Trey Tellingman will not be called upon. We're just going to rematch the semi-final between Sakuraba and Silveira. And that's what's going to be the UFC heavyweight tournament final. Why not just restart the fight when you can clearly see what happened? Restart the fight, and then the winner faces Tellingman. Like, I feel like he get done dirty in all of this, but that's just how it goes sometimes. So before we get to the final, we have a title fight. UFC's first ever middleweight champion will be crowned right here. Kevin Jackson, Frank Shamrock, younger brother of Ken Shamrock, only 24 years old. This should be a good one. And the fight starts, and it's gone. Shamrock via armbar in 15 seconds. Are you fucking kidding me? I thought these title fights were going to be the saving grace of this card. Now there is some real pressure on Couture and Smith to deliver. I couldn't believe this when I seen it. Like, I was so hyped for this fight, knowing Kevin Jackson's credentials, what we'd seen of him before in his tournament win, up against Frank Shamrock, his reputation, what we know of him. Like, from Lions Den, obviously, he's going to be decent. Just from, like, a first time viewer watching this, what you're thinking when you see Frank Shamrock, you're like, okay, this guy's probably going to be pretty good. Up against Olympic gold medalist, though. And then he just fucking armbars him in 15 seconds. I could not believe it. They tried to say it was 22 seconds. I swear the clock was like 15 when he tapped. But, again, that's just how it goes sometimes. So, we have a Vitor Belfort video next. Before the Vitor Belfort fight, He's up against Joe Charles, or you may know him as Ghetto Man, or on this channel, you'll know him as Black Aladdin from UFC 5. I still have the image of him dancing with the fucking full Aladdin garb and the Timbs on. It is burned into my brain. So this fight begins, and like, look, you actually need to see this to believe it. What does fucking Black Aladdin have covering the cheeks right now? Is that a fucking nappy or a diaper for my American brothers? What the fuck is he wearing right now? Anyway, oh my god. He throws the calf kick. Vitor takes that invitation to just clinch him and then get the takedown. Steps across to mount. Vitor then transitions to try and isolate the arm. Charles scrambles. Some nice work here on the ground, but he ends up on bottom again. And I've spoke about the production at previous UFC events. I've actually given it quite a lot of praise for the most part, saying how it gets better after every event. I don't know what goes on here and what the fuck is happening with the audio. I spoke about the golf commentary from Blatnick, but the mics set up around the octagon are picking up either some random Japanese or Portuguese from a corner, but it's these guys screaming in a foreign language, and it's interfering with the commentary, where commentary's just continuing to speak normally using their indoor voices, but you can't hear what they're saying over the yelling that's happening directly into the mic. And I'm just bringing it up here because this hasn't happened at any other event, and I don't know if it's the Japanese audience, I doubt it considering how quiet they've been, or if it's some guy in Vitor's corner. Again, it's just foreign, so I don't know what language this is, but this has never happened before, even in a Vitor fight, so I don't know what the problem is now. But back to the fight, there's some more scrambles as Vitor, again, constantly looking for the arm. Vitor gets the mount and finally gets the armbar and the win. This felt personal for Vitor. It was as though like he was determined to show people he could actually like move on the ground and has good ground game, because he did not throw a single punch this entire fight. They tried, right now, they tried to build this as a super fight, which is fucking egregious. This is not a super fight. UFC is on its arse right now and kind of tapped for stars. That is not an excuse for trying to sell this to us as a super fight, but it was a nice win for Vitor nonetheless. Goldberg again calls the internet a great area where you can access wonderful information, and wow, how times have changed. I would kill for the internet to be a great area to access wonderful information again. But yeah, don't forget to dial up UFC and surf for the website online. And whilst we're here, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more of these retro reviews. They preview our main event for the heavyweight title, looking at Maurice Smith, and I will never get tired of watching that combo he hit on Mark Coleman in overtime, having been on bottom the majority of the fight, getting back up, hitting that 2-2-1-2 high kick in overtime. In overtime. He had Coleman on top of him nearly that whole fight. And at UFC 10, the final between Don Fry and Mark Coleman, we reviewed it here, you should watch it. I said at that time I would love to have seen how that fight would have went when both men had the same starting position. Like, I get how tournaments work, but Don Fry had been in there 5 more minutes than Mark Coleman that night. See if they'd both fought each other fresh, or maybe just like closer to total fight time. I think that fight would have gone the same way as Smith and Coleman. Just me personally. I think Don Fry, we would be talking about that a different way. And then who knows if Mark Coleman becomes the first heavyweight champion, the 6-0 streak. If that fight, Don Fry against Mark Hall, like that fight that happened earlier that night, if that had been stopped earlier, which it probably could have been, it's interesting to think about how that would have changed the course of history. But you should watch that UFC 10 review. It's in the playlist on the channel. I'll link it at the end of the video. But we then get the video for Couture, then a replay of the Sakuraba-Silveira fight before we then get to the tournament final, which is also the same fight as our semi-final, but hey-ho. Bruce Buffer announces that the last fight between these two has been ruled a draw. This contradicts what Mike Goldberg told us when he said that Big John's decision stands, which technically would be a TKO win for Silveira. Fast forward to the present day, that's now been changed to a no contest. So you decide for yourself. You watching the video right now, tell me what you think. But we get into this, Sakuraba's second MMA fight, or third, depending on how you look at it. Silveira is 29-1 and again 60 pounds heavier. The fight starts, they clinch. Silveira able to press Sakuraba against the cage, gets the takedown. Sakuraba has a hold of Silveira's wrist, and even through the scrambles, he still holds on to the wrist, looking for the arm. He made that clear early on. But the two then make it to the feet. Silveira still in control as we go back to the floor. And Sakuraba now is on top, but Silveira isn't really in any trouble as he himself looks for the arm on Sakuraba. But almost out of nowhere, Sakuraba is able to transition to the armbar, and he gets it. Silveira taps out and the crowd goes ballistic. This is now the loudest they have been all night. And the corner jump into the cage, and this guy with an eye patch caught me so off guard. Like, who the fuck is this guy? But I'm assuming that it's Yoji Anjo from the Tank Abbott fight. He now just has a makeshift eye patch on. But Sakuraba wins the tournament, gets carried out on his team's shoulders after an impressive win. And look, there you have it. The 183-pounder, allegedly, not 203, wins the heavyweight tournament. How did that happen? We'll never know. But after the tournament final, it is now time. We have Randy Couture for the first time called The Natural by Mike Goldberg. And before the final, we get the movie trailer outlining how we got here, looking at both Maurice Smith and Randy Couture's journey to this fight here. This was great, right? This right here was a fucking video package. This is what I wish the opening intro was, because this was great. Genuinely amazing, tremendous, right? I can't say enough good things about this video package. They're calling Maurice Smith the Iceman, which I don't like that. I don't know if he had that name in kickboxing, but in MMA it feels like sacrilege that anybody other than Chuck Liddell is called the Iceman. It does not feel right to call anyone else the Iceman except for Chuck Liddell. But here we are in the octagon playing the national anthem of America. This was a thing when we reviewed Pride 1, the main event between Gracie and Takada had the national anthems. Like, they had a sort of ceremony before the fight, and this must just be a Japanese thing, because again, we have it here. Maurice Smith and Randy Couture, Bruce Buffer as well, all looking up to the rafters where the American flag's hanging. Is that a thing? Do you need to look at the flag during the national anthem? I didn't know about that. But Randy Couture out here in the long boys, like, what the fuck is up with that? But looking at the tail of the tape, these guys are similar age, height, same weight. A pretty even matchup here. This should be good. Big John gets it on and the fight starts. Maurice Smith immediately throws leg kicks, whilst also managing to avoid the takedown, which I was shocked at. Well, he avoided the takedown for about 40 seconds before then Couture manages to take down Smith. And it's just sort of a ground clinic from here on out, to be honest, into side control. And not going to lie, not a whole lot of action. Not because nobody's pushing for anything to per se, but just not really a whole lot happening. Couture into side mount, lands a couple of strikes, and then he gets a crucifix, almost a key lock, but now back into half guard and then mount. Smith's defense here on the ground, I want to point out, is not completely useless. In his previous fights, we spoke about how, or it might have just been the Mark Coleman fight actually, now I think about it, but we spoke about how his striking off the back is really good. But here, his actual defensive transitions, moving from being in on the bad end, on the receiving end of a mount, moving back into half guard, back into full guard, is actually quite impressive from a kickboxer who's not meant to have much of anything on the ground. So I get, look, he's at Lions Den. He doesn't look the same as the other Lions Den guys, I will say that much. But for training for what feels like at least a short time, they keep talking about this guy's kickboxing record like he's Alex Pereira. So I'm presuming that that's what he's been doing his whole life. From a kickboxer, this is pretty decent ground defence. Couture stands back up. Maurice Smith kicks up, and I thought he was just going to get thrown to the side and then taken back into side control, but we're back into guard, and Jeff Blatnick actually gives credit to Maurice Smith here as well. It's not just me, you see. The Olympic gold medal wrestlers also recognise some decent grappling, okay? It looked as though we were getting back to the feet here. Couture almost gets the back before Shamrock just screams, roll, 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 and then we're back into half guard again. Like, I keep, the only information I can give you is what I'm seeing, and it's a lot of groundwork, it's a lot of transitions. Around the 10-minute mark or so, Couture is able to mount while still in half guard, but lands the most he has all fight, some decent shots, nothing devastating. But it's taken that long for anything of note to land from either guy. Smith is about to reverse position, but we scramble. Couture is back into the guard, more fence grabbing as they move closer to the cage. Couture moves into side control. As soon as Mike Goldberg mentions the arena being quiet as a sign of respect to the fighters, Jeff Blatnick then moves back into golf commentary mode. And we end regulation with Couture on top as we move into overtime. They say that Couture is part of the Raw team. Okay. And then they explain that that means real American wrestling. I'm glad they specified that. But Smith starts overtime, nasty low kick. Couture then accepts the invitation to the takedown. Smith, again, we move into side control and stay there for the entire first overtime period. The buzzer goes with an armlock attempt from Couture, but nothing actually applied. Second overtime starts. Smith lands some nice shit to start the round, and then after 30 seconds, Couture gets a takedown. Couture lands some knees from the top to the head of Maurice Smith, which are completely illegal, and absolutely nothing is done. And that's it. We close the second overtime with Couture on top. The two shake hands with each other and each other's corner before the decision is rendered, and Bruce Buffer announces that one judge has declared the fight a draw and two judges have given the fight to the new undisputed UFC heavyweight champion of the world, Randy the Natural Couture. That is the first time that Maurice Smith has ever lost a title fight, and the judges score these fights, right, based on grappling, striking and aggressiveness. I know that's very specific, definitely not up to interpretation, and totally not subjective in any way at all. But I had Couture winning this one. There was limited striking. To be honest, Maurice landed the few and only strikes on the feet. When the fight was on the ground, it was Couture who took it there. He was in control. He had the better striking on the ground. You can't really measure aggression in this one. Both guys were fighting for transitions, top and bottom, but Couture was controlling the action, which I think is the important part. And that was enough to win the fight. Maurice sort of assesses the fight the same way. He says all Couture done was hold him down, and he says it was pretty even on both sides in terms of the striking. He doesn't think he lost because Couture didn't beat him up, and to be honest, I get that, but he says all Couture done was stay on top. That's kind of the point, but Maurice says that he will be back. As Couture gets interviewed by Japanese TV, they promo UFC 16, that will take place in Louisiana. That will be our first review of 1998. Kevin Jackson will be back to avenge his loss to the Lions Den Gym. He takes on Jerry Bolander. We see the return of Chemo, Frank Shamrock, and the debut of Pat Miletich, but that is for our next review. Randy Couture is presented with the heavyweight belt. He says that this was a close fight. He says he expected it to go long, and I always think that mentality is what actually makes the fight go long. But elsewise, Couture speaks well, and it's sort of interview bingo, to be honest, but Mike Goldberg and Jeff Blatnick review the fight, saying the knee strikes on the ground may have swayed the judge's decision. They're illegal. Like, am I the only one mentioning this? You've literally told us this before, that you can't do that, and we're just acting as though, yeah, you hit him with knee strikes to the back of the head on the ground, and that might have swayed the judge's decision. It shouldn't have. You're not allowed to do it. But that brings UFC 15.5, UFC Ultimate Japan, to a close. All in all, an okay event, not spectacular. Let's say it now, right? The cultural differences in the Japanese audience compared to an American one led to a distractingly quiet commentary desk. which wasn't a problem when we reviewed the Pride 1 event, but that might be because the commentary was done after the fact and not live. As for the action in the octagon, Frank Shamrock was very impressive. Sakuraba's debacle was just that, an absolute debacle. A bad call from Big John, who doesn't admit to it, therefore commentary doesn't admit it. I don't understand why commentary now always has to side with the referee when everybody at home sees exactly what happened. It was a bad call, which is annoying, but it was impressive to see Sakuraba submit the bigger man in the final, in the rematch. Had Sakuraba versus Silveira 1 and 2 in the same night. But look, that's just how it goes. Sometimes the circumstances around getting it is not great, but if we just admitted that, yeah, it's not great, it would be so much better than just pretending as though nothing happened. Fucking Officer Barbrady, nothing to see here, everything is all good. Our referee's a genius. No, he's allowed to make a mistake, and it's okay to say he made a mistake. Tank Abbott needs to work on his cardio and start checking some leg kicks, but an okay performance, nothing crazy, basically smudging him to a finish. Tank Abbott goes all out in the first 10 seconds, and if he cannot KO you in those first 10 seconds, he just goes for a takedown. But that's Tank's problem. The Vitor Belfort fight was a farce. I don't know if someone dropped out early or dropped out, like, when I say early, I mean earlier that day, that Joe Charles was just the guy on hand, and you need to fill this spot, buddy. Get your shit together and get the fuck out there. But we haven't seen this guy since he last got dominated by Dan Severn, and then he's in a quote-unquote super fight. Get that to fuck, seriously. The championship fight between Maurice Smith and Randy Couture, 21 minutes long. Half of it was probably compelling. Maybe you could describe it as that. As soon as it got into overtime, you knew, like, it's only 3 minutes a piece long. As soon as Couture got the takedowns, you knew that it was over. I agree with the decision that Couture won, and I also understand Smith's frustrations. They are valid. Not my favourite event. Nothing really to go back and watch. A historical note, UFC's first time in Japan. So if you want to watch it for that, go ahead. But I actually think the crowd's a bit of a hindrance, particularly if nothing else but for commentary. But that's it for 15.5. Join me next time at UFC 16, the battle in the Bayou. Kimo is back once again, seemingly for his annual UFC fight. That's what it feels like at this point anyway. Frank Shamrock is back, so too is Kevin Jackson. Tank Abbott on commentary. What could go wrong? Make sure to subscribe, hit the notify bell so you don't miss out on that video when it drops. The last retro review on the channel, UFC 15, has nearly 1,500 views, so that's the most viewed retro review. So thank you for that. I would appreciate if you like this video, comment your own thoughts below, share with a friend. And yeah, thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.